And even though for 200 years, the industrialized countries were in complete ignorance of the problem that they were creating, we now have a duty to find those funds. So let us therefore, in the next days, devote ourselves to this extraordinary task, so that we not only continue with a program that is of green industrial revolution that is already creating millions of high-wage, high-skilled jobs in power and technology, taking our economies forward. Let us also do enough to save our planet and our way of life. And as we work, let us think about those billions of beady eyes that are watching us around the world, increasingly edgy and disenchanted. And let us think of the billions more of the unborn, whose anger will be all the greater if we fail. We may not feel much like James Bond, not all of us necessarily look like James Bond, but we have the opportunity and we have the duty to make this summit the moment when humanity finally began, and I stress began, to defuse that bomb. And to make this the moment when we began irrefutably to turn the tide and to begin the fight back against climate change.
This is a big challenge for us. As the chair of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, CVF and V20, we are promoting the interest of the 48 climate vulnerable countries. We are also sharing best practices and adaptation knowledge regionally through the South Asia office of the Global Center of Adaptations, Dhaka. On behalf of the CVF, Bangladesh is pursuing to establish a climate emergency pact. Excellencies, let me end with following 4 points. First, the major emitters must submit ambitious NDCs and implement those. Second, developed countries should fulfill their commitments of providing $100 billion annually with a 50-50 balance between adaptation and mitigation. Third, the developed countries should disseminate clean and green technology at affordable cost to the most vulnerable countries. The development needs of CVF countries also need to be considered. Fourth, the issue of loss and damage must be addressed, including global sharing of responsibility for climate migrants displaced by sea level rise, salinity increase, river erosion, floods, droughts, and all.
The 6 years since the Paris Climate Agreement have been the 6 hottest years on record. Our addiction to fossil fuels is pushing humanity to the brink. We face a stark choice. Either we stop it or it stops us. And it's time to say, enough. Enough of brutalizing biodiversity. Enough of killing ourselves with carbon. Enough of treating nature like a toilet. Enough of burning and drilling and mining our way deeper. We are digging our own graves. Our planet is changing before our eyes, from the ocean depths to mountain tops, from melting glaciers to relentless extreme weather events. Sea level rise is double the rate it was 30 years ago. Oceans are hotter than ever and getting warmer faster. Parts of the Amazon rainforest now emit more carbon than they absorb. Recent climate action announcements might give the impression that we are on track to turn things around. This is an illusion. The last published report on national determined contributions showed that they would still condemn the world to a calamitous 2.7-degree increase. And even if the recent pledges were clear and credible, and there are serious questions about some of them, we are still careening towards climate catastrophe. Even in the best case scenario, temperatures will rise well above 2 degrees.
Indeed, for almost 2 years now, the pandemic has caused devastation and disruption to lives and livelihoods across the world. And I know this has particularly affected the least developed countries and the small island developing states. And because of the pandemic, as you know, we postponed COP26 by a year. But during that year, climate change did not take time off. And the IPCC report in August was a wake-up call for all of us. It made clear that the lights are flashing red on the climate dashboard. That report, agreed by 195 governments, makes clear that human activity is unequivocally the cause of global warming. And we know that the window to keep 1.5 degrees within reach is closing. I've been humbled to speak over this year with communities devastated by climate change. On a visit to Jomsom in Nepal in the Hindu Kush region, I spoke to communities literally displaced from their homes from a combination of droughts and floods. In Barbuda, I met communities still suffering from the ravages of Hurricane Irma 4 years ago. I've spoken to communities in East Africa fighting plagues of locusts spawned by climate change. And earlier this month, I spoke to a group of women in Madagascar, determinedly coping with what some describe as the first climate-induced famine in the world. Friends, in each of our countries, we are seeing the devastating impact of a changing climate. Floods, cyclones, wildfires, record temperatures. And we know that our shared planet is changing for the worse. And we can only address that together through this international system. And we know what we need to do, because 6 years ago in Paris, we agreed our shared goals. We said we would protect people and nature from the effects of climate change. We said we would get finance flowing to climate action. And we said we would limit the rise in global temperature to well below 2 degrees, pursuing efforts towards 1.5.